Hi there, my name is Stephanie, and I will be presenting the Teenage Brain and Self-Consciousness for the class EDP 310, Understanding the Brain. Enjoy! Interested in this topic because it explains why teenagers often feel judged by others or anxious in social situations. Research shows that adolescents tend to have stronger emotional reactions when they feel like they're being watched compared to us adults, which is closely tied to the brain development during that stage of life. These changes also connect with cognition as a developing brain influences behavior, decision making, and how teens respond to different situations. This topic is personally meaningful to me because I have friends with children who are entering their teenage years, and I also want to have my own therapy practice with children. And gaining a deeper understanding of adolescent development will help me support them with more empathy and awareness. All right, let's dive in a little further about this. So, during adolescence, the brain goes through major changes that affect how teens think, feel, and even behave. One key is the development of a stronger sense of self, which increases self consciousness in social situations. Research shows that teenagers experience more intense emotional reactions when they feel like they're being watched compared to adults. This is partly due to an increased activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, also known as the MPFC, a brain area involved in self evaluation and social thinking. As a result, social situations can feel more emotionally overwhelming for teens. These changes are a normal part of the brain development and help shape identity during adolescence, is what was stated in the book by Eagleman. What does the research literature have to say about this topic? Well, like I shared earlier, teenagers do tend to have a higher social anxiety versus us adults, especially when they're being watched. But this is, of course, linked to an increased activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, also what I mentioned earlier. But they also did further studies in that portion of their brain, and they actually found that around age 15, it's actually really responsible for self evaluation and social thinking. They did further research and found that that area of our brain actually peaks during adolescent years, so making social experiences feel even more intense and personally significant. Additionally, ongoing brain development areas related to decision making and emotional regulation actually contributes to stronger emotional reactions from adolescents. And the literature further states that teenage self consciousness is deeply rooted in neurological development. Another research literature shows that adolescent behavior is often misunderstood as irrational, but it's actually influenced by ongoing brain development and heightened sensitivity to social and emotional cues. During adolescence, the brain reward system develops earlier than the cognitive control system, creating an imbalance that affects decision making, especially in emotionally charged or social situations. Studies using go/no go tasks demonstrate that teens perform similarly to us adults in neutral conditions, but their self control declines when emotional or social cues, signals from others, are present. This increased sensitivity to social cues explains why adolescents may feel more self conscious and reactive when they believe they're being observed or judged. Overall, the research emphasizes that adolescent cognition regulates behavior changes based on emotional and social environments. So, we're going to discuss risk factors. So, a major risk factor is a 200% increase in mortality rate, largely due to preventable risk taking behaviors rather than disease found in teenagers. So, not understanding teenagers can lead to harmful assumptions, such as believing they're irrational or incapable of making decisions, which can negatively affect how they are treated in society. These misunderstandings may justify limiting adolescents' autonomy or decision making rights, even though their behavior is part of normal development. Teens are also more vulnerable in emotional or social situations because, like we mentioned earlier, their brain reward system is highly sensitive, which can lead to impulsive decisions. Without proper understanding and support, these biological and social factors can increase risky behavior instead of helping adolescents develop healthy self control and independence. In the field of psychology, especially with working with children or adolescents, understanding these will help professionals provide better support, reduce mislabeling, and create environments that promote healthy development and self control in adolescence. So, further risk factors show that not understanding teenagers can lead to misinterpreting their behaviors as intentional or problematic, or like I mentioned earlier, irrational, when in reality, it's actually driven by brain development. It's a completely normal thing. The book further explains, Eagleman, of course, that adolescents are naturally more self conscious, emotional, and prone to risk taking due to imbalancement between the highly active reward system and still developing decision making areas. Risk factors include a lack of supportive environment, poor emotional guidance, and limited social understanding, which can negatively affect brain development and behavior. These changes significantly impact cognition. As teens, they're still developing impulse control, reasoning, and emotional regulation. In my field of interest, which is the mental health field, this is very important to understand these factors because it allows for more empathy, better communication, and more effective support when working with adolescents. How does this topic relate to how people interact with the world? Well, I'm going to be discussing from the research from Casey and Cottle's article. So, the teenage brain actually relates to how people interact with the world because adolescents respond very differently depending on emotional and social situations. Research shows that teens can think and make decisions as well as adults can, but it has to be in calm situations. Their behavior changes when emotions or social pressures are involved. This helps explain why teenagers may feel more self conscious or react more strongly when they believe others are watching them or even judging them. I find this really meaningful because it shows that these behaviors are not just bad choices, but they're influenced by brain development and sensitivity to social experiences. In my future work in the mental health field, this understanding will help me support adolescents with more empathy and create environments that help them build confidence and even self control. So, this topic relates to how people interact with the world because brain development shapes how individuals perceive, feel, and respond to their environment. In the book by Eagleman, they explain further that the brain is live wired, meaning experiences, especially from caregivers and early environments, play a tremendous major role in shaping behavior and social interactions. For example, children raised without emotional support showed delays in the brain development, which affected their ability to communicate and even form relationships. During adolescence, increased self consciousness and emotional sensitivity make social interactions feel more intense, influencing how teens respond to others. And overall, the way that people interact with the world is continuously shaped by both early caregiving experiences and ongoing brain development. My field of interest is becoming a children's therapist, and this research strongly connects to it because it is my future career goals. In Eagleman's book, it explains that adolescence is a very critical period of our brain development. And like I mentioned earlier, the medial prefrontal cortex is making teens more self conscious and sensible to others. So, this whole research was very interesting for me to do because it is going to hold a lot of value because I do plan to work with children through the age of 18 and learning about adolescence even further and seeing how they're often misunderstood really connects with my future field of interest. Through this topic, I learned that teenage behavior is driven by ongoing brain development, not just their choice. The idea of live wired brain really stood out to me because it's showing how experiences shape these teens during a time of heightened self consciousness and emotional sensitivity. Since areas for decision making and impulse controls are still truly developing, and teens may struggle with regulation and even risk take. But this impacts cognition by showing how brain changes influences thinking and even their behavior. And overall, it helped me view adolescents with more empathy and compassion. And here's my reference page, and I do appreciate your time watching my video.